Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Board of Education for January 5th, 2015. We have some people in the audience tonight. Thank you for coming. This is a rather special night for those of us who are being sworn in as new board members, or in some cases, old board members. So we'll get going, and Mrs. Laura, would you take the roll, please?
Yes, Mrs. Bonnefield?
Here.
Mrs. Burton?
Here.
Mr. Centers?
Here.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Here.
Mrs. McDonald?
Here.
Mrs. Laura is present. President Johnson?
Here. We have a quorum.
We have
We have a quorum. That will bring us to item 2, administering the constitutional oath of office. And I will ask Judge Scher to come forward and swear us in, and I will be the first.
Thank you for the promotion. I'm only a magistrate.
Tell Judge McCann I did the honor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can do that.
Where would you like?
Right here.
This is
Right
fine.
here? Okay,
This is fine.
thank you. All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Mark Johnson, do solemnly swear
I, Mark Johnson, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of the member of the Board of Education
of the office of a member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll need your signature. Okay, and we'll need the notary, Ms. Wozniak, to handle the,
Notary. And I will ask Mrs. Burton to come forward.
thank you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you. Please raise your right hand. I, Colleen Burton,
I, Colleen Burton,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of the member of the Board of Education
of the office of the member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you and congratulations. Thank you. Mr. Centers? Good evening. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Thank you. I, Dan Centers,
I, Dan Centers,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of member of the Board of Education
of office of member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you and congratulations. And last but not least, Ms. Jarvis. Now you know how this is going to work. So sometimes it needs to be relaxed. Please raise your right hand. I, Liz Jarvis,
I, Liz Jarvis,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and the Constitution of the State of Michigan,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of Member of the Board of Education
of the office of Member of the Board of Education
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
of the Livonia Public Schools School District,
Wayne County, Michigan,
Wayne County, Michigan,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you and congratulations. Thank you very much. I wish all the members the best of luck.
Thank you, Magistrate Chair, we
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank you
it.
very much. Thank you.
All right. We can now move on to audience communication. I don't have any blue slips. John, did you want to? Just, we'll get you a blue slip after, John.
Would be better.
No, just go ahead.
Thank you, President Johnson, members of the board, Dr. Liepa. As you know, I'm the Legislative and Advocacy Chair for Livonia PTSA Council. I was asked to do that by our President Julie Thompson because of my connections with the various legislators in the community. I just wanted to remind everybody, first of all, I'll give the community, through the board to the community, my phone number is 734-422-6186, or my email is smalljgrzebik@sbcglobal.net. And I just wanted to remind everybody to sign up for the Tri-County Alliance updates. That is something that Dr. Liepa would like us to do. And I also send out reminders to the community, usually through the president or the president of each school or the unit legislative chair to send to their memberships, within the schools. So I look forward to working with you on this project, and as well as Dr. Liepa in community relations. I think it's a very good thing to get ahead of some of this legislation before it actually becomes law. So I just wanted to take that opportunity to, again, say we're here to work with you on that. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grisman. Appreciate it. Any other individuals that want to address the board tonight? Seeing none, we will move on then to election of officers. And we'll just give a brief summary of how this is going to work. We don't have to have a second for the nominations. Anyone can nominate. We don't have to wait for a second. When the person is nominated, that person is nominated. A person can be nominated for more than one office. That's not a problem. But a member can't nominate more than one person for an office until everyone has had an opportunity to make nominations. So keep that in mind. And then after the nominations, I will repeat the individuals who have been nominated for those positions. When there are no more nominations, then I will close the nominations and we'll call for a roll. Okay, everybody understand the process? All right, then we will begin, and the first office will be for president, and I would like to take this opportunity to nominate Mrs. Burton for president. Are there any other nominations for president? Seeing none, the nominations for president are closed. Mrs. Laura, would you take the roll, please?
President Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Centers,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald,
Yes.
Mrs. Lewis is yes, motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations, President Burton.
Thank you very much.
We will now move on to nominations for vice president.
President Johnson,
Mrs. Bonnefield.
I would like to nominate Mrs. Laura.
Very good. Mrs. Laura has been nominated for vice president. Are there any other nominations for vice president? Seeing none, the nominations for vice president are closed. Mrs. Laura, would you take the roll?
Mrs. Bonnefield,
Yes.
Mrs. Burton,
Yes.
Mr. Centers.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis,
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura says yes. President Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mrs. Laura, and Vice President. I will now open the nominations for elections for Secretary. Mrs. Burton.
Yes. President Johnson, I would like to nominate Tammy Bonnefield for secretary.
Mrs. Bonnefield has been nominated for Secretary. Are there any other nominations for Secretary? Seeing none, the nominations for Secretary are closed. Mrs. Laura, would you take the roll?
Yes, Mrs. Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura says yes. President Johnson?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Mrs. Bonnefield is elected Secretary.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Now we have the appointment of the treasurer, and I guess I can make that motion. Do we need a motion to? All right, then I will make that motion. Move that Lisa Abbey be appointed treasurer of the Livonia Public Schools School District for 2015.
Support.
Okay, I moved. Mrs. President Burton supported. Mrs. Laura, would you take the roll?
Yes, President Johnson?
Yes.
President Burton?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
We're not used to this yet.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mr. Centers?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. McDonald?
Yes.
Mrs. Laura says yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Mrs. Abbey is appointed treasurer. And that concludes the elections of officers, and that is all on the agenda for our special meeting. If there's no other business for the special meeting, then we are adjourned. Thank you. And please stick around. We have some refreshments to congratulate our new members and our new officers. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome to the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Livonia Public Schools School Board of January 5th. I'd like to open the meeting by thanking those who participated in our vote tonight of officers. This is my first meeting as president, so I'll stumble through. I'm sure I'll make a few little glitches. I would like to thank very much Mark Johnson for what I believe has been a superb job as president. You've left some very big shoes for me to fill, and I hope I do it nearly as well as you do. First on our agenda tonight is audience communications, and we do have a blue slip from Ruth Kassan. Ruth, if you'd like to join us.
Ruth Kassar.
Pardon me?
Ruth Kassar.
Kassar, I'm sorry, I mispronounced it. Mrs. Ruth Kassar.
Do I sit here?
Yes, come on up, join us.
Hi.
Hello there.
The letter is addressed to Mr. Mark Johnson, President, because that's who he was.
Until 7 minutes ago, that was correct, so.
I apologize.
No, go right ahead.
Dear Mr. Johnson and board members, as a parent of a special needs student and a special educator myself, I would like to express my concerns regarding the selection of the new Administrator of Student Services for Livonia Public Schools. As you know, the opening was posted internally prior to Thanksgiving holiday and closed just 5 business days later on December 4th, 2015. The timing of the opening did not allow for notice to parents, nor did the selection process include a committee of parents and teachers. The haste taking and filling of the position may have limited the district from seeking well-qualified individuals that can work with teachers, students, and parents, and rendered the selection without transparency. As a representatives of public agencies, I hope that you too are concerned regarding transparency and the filling of positions. Additionally, the posting notes qualifications, including ability to work cooperatively with the Board of Education, Central Office Administration, students, staff, and community, and additionally, excellent communication skills in a written format, as well as the ability to communicate with staff, parents, and community members in a speaking format. I also have concerns regarding Dr. Terriel's qualifications in the areas as evidenced by the dictatorial and even sarcastic manner that she has employed in my son's meetings during the past 2 years. She does not allow parents to participate fully. She interrupts or squelches their comments. At our first meeting in November 2012, when the special education team had not assessed the goals and objectives, nor completed a required evaluation, the IEP had to be adjourned and resumed the following day. Dr. Terriel angrily told me that I, who had to take off more time, would just have a half hour to complete the meeting, as she was busy. In subsequent meetings, she has demonstrated more of the same behavior. I have requested more than once that she not be present in my son's meeting. However, with few exceptions, this has not occurred. At one meeting, Dr. Terriel refused to provide me with the requested draft of the paperwork. Instead, she clicked through a whiteboard presentation that did not allow for the reflection and review needed in the process. Sadly, at my son's last IEP in November 2014, I put 15, after over an hour of the same dictatorial, sarcastic manner, I turned to Mr. Harper, the assistant principal. I told him that if she could not tune down her behavior, that I would be leaving. Mr. Harper had to tell her to improve her communication skills in a taped IEP. Furthermore, the qualifications list evidence of ability to take a leadership role in special education through active participation in professional organizations and special education interest groups. After continuing school and meeting issues with Dr. Terriel and one of my son's special education teachers, I asked that my son be removed from their squad and the Mork Star hockey team. My confidential request to the liaison coach was countered by a vote of all the coaches, including Dr. Terriel and the teacher, a possible conflict of interest, and as a Mork Star representative stated, a violation of my son's rights. I have retained the email regarding the vote. After I removed my son from the team, this did not stop Dr. Terriel from informing me at my son's next taped IEP that I did not have to remove him from the team. I had not solicited her advice. I hope that the Livonia School Board will consider these concerns requiring the hiring of the Administrator of Student Services. Transparency in the hiring process is essential to a public school agency and its relations with parents in the community. Such an administrator needs to maintain excellent communication skills and refrain from possible conflict of interest when dealing with parents and students in and out of the public school environment. Thank you for your considerations. Sincerely, Ruth Kassar, parent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who would I give this to?
Give it to Dr. Lipa.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bird?
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Lipa.
I would just, certainly I respect any parent that wants to come and share information with the Board of Education, and certainly respect also the opinion of Mrs. Kassar. Just so the board knows, and people watching this on TV would know, that we did receive many notes of both congratulations and thank yous for hiring Jen Terrio for this position, both from parents and staff members. So I just want to make sure that there's this other side that would be out there in regards to the person appointed to this very important position. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the benefit of the public, the audience communications portion is a time that the board listens to comments. It is not a time for us to engage in question and answer session, but it is time for us to listen to the concerns of the public. The next item on our agenda is the Finance Committee, and we will be turning that over to Mrs. Laura.
Thank you, President Burton. We have 3 items in the Finance Committee today, and our first is to purchase mobile devices for elementary students, and that is Mrs. Ellis.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Laura. Congratulations to our new board member and to our renewed board members, and also to our new officers. And good evening, everyone. Tonight we are bringing to you a recommendation to purchase mobile devices to pilot at the elementary level. Last month, we brought to the Board of Education a recommendation to purchase mobile devices to pilot at the middle school level, and we brought a recommendation to purchase Chromebooks, which the board approved, and we have placed the order for those laptops. Tonight, we bring to you a recommendation for mobile devices to pilot at the elementary level. Our goal is to purchase mobile devices for all of our schools by the 2016-17 school year. But because of the magnitude of the purchase, we want to make sure that we are purchasing a device or devices that match the curriculum and instructional needs of the teachers as well as the learning needs of the students, which is why we have chosen to pilot devices before we make large-scale purchases. So tonight we are bringing to you a recommendation to purchase 3 different mobile devices at the elementary level. The documents that you have in your board packet have been revised, and I have a revised memo for you. And what has changed in the memo is one of the tablets that we have decided to upgrade in the purchase. One of the tablets has a 16 gigabyte memory, and after careful consideration and discussion, we have decided that it would be best to upgrade to a 32 gigabyte memory, and I will review that as we go through the recommendations this evening. So for our elementary pilot, we have 3 different devices that we're recommending. One is a notebook and 2 are tablets. And we've selected 2 of our elementary schools to pilot these devices, Garfield and Kennedy Elementary School. Each school has selected 3 teachers, and each teacher will spend at least a month with these devices in his or her classroom. They are very much looking forward to piloting these technology tools and are looking forward to being involved in the decision-making process that will give us input on the devices, the mobile devices that we will purchase for all of our K-4 schools. If the board agrees, we will purchase 1 cart of each of these 3 devices in these 2 elementary schools. So moving on to the recommendation, we're looking at the notebook. We'll begin with that one. We're recommending 72 Samsung Notebooks 2. This is the same mobile device that we recommended for purchase at the middle schools. This device has an 11.6-inch high-definition screen, keyboard, touchpad, camera for photos and videos, a built-in microphone, and a USB port. It has up to an 8-hour battery life, 4 gigabytes of memory, and a 16 gigabyte storage capacity. We're also recommending, as we did with the middle school devices, the 72 management license. This is a one-time purchase. This is required for educators, and it allows us then to manage or control from one site all of these devices. And that would be from our IT department. We're also recommending 2 storage or charging carts. Each of these carts will house 36 notebooks, and each elementary school would receive 1 notebook with 36 of the Chromebooks on each cart. The total for the Chromebook, management license, and storage charging carts is $25,493.52. Moving on then to the tablets. We have 2 tablets. The first one is the Samsung Galaxy tablet for education. We're recommending 72 of those. This has 16 gigabytes of memory, a 10.1-inch screen, 3 megapixel camera, and a 720p high-definition video recording capability. We're recommending also 72 Google Android management licenses. These are like the Chromebook licenses. This is a one-time purchase, again, required for educators, which allows us then to manage these devices or these tablets from one site, which is our IT department. We're also recommending 2 storage charging carts. Each cart, again, will house and store 36 of the tablets. Each elementary school would receive 1 cart along with the 36 tablets. The total for the Galaxy tablets, management licenses, and storage charging carts is $27,532.56. Finally, we're moving on to the second tablet, which is the third mobile device, and this is, we are recommending the iPad, and this is the device that we increased the capacity to 32 gigabytes rather than the 16 gigabytes. We thought that it would provide easier access for teachers and students to store apps, better capability for videotaping and storing photos. The iPads come bundled in a 10-pack, so we're requesting 7 10-packs of the iPad Air, plus 2 individual iPads for a total of 72 iPads, each with 32 gigabytes of memory, and each iPad will have a 9.7-inch screen, a 5 megapixel camera, and 1080p high-definition video recording capabilities. And then 2 power sync carts, and each cart will house and charge 36 iPads. Each elementary school then would get a cart with the 36 iPads on each cart. This total for the iPads and the power sync carts is $36,537.90. The total amount needed to purchase all 3 types of mobile devices is $89,563.98. Since the vendor for the Chromebook notebooks and the Android tablets is Troxel, and Troxel is one of the REM-C vendors for these devices, we do not need to get additional bids. And since Apple is the sole provider of iPads, once again, no additional bids are required. And as I mentioned last month, districts must purchase mobile devices to pilot in our schools. Unlike textbooks and instructional resources, where publishing companies give us these resources to pilot for free in our districts, that is not the case with technology tools. We must purchase the tools in order to pilot them in our schools. Funds for these purchases will come from the district's technology bond, and the purchase will not expend the full allocation of funds available to both Garfield and Kennedy for mobile devices. They will have additional funds available to purchase additional devices after the pilot is complete. And teachers will be asked to complete an evaluation tool at the end of the pilot so that we can use that input to inform decisions for future mobile device purchases for K-4 schools. Joining me this evening is Mr. Tim Clan, our district IT administrator, and he and I would be very happy to respond to any questions or comments that you might have on this recommendation.
Any questions or comments? Mrs. Bonnefield?
Thank you. My question is, we're hitting 3 different operating systems, correct? Is there any, and we're trying to decide on which one to go with? It seems like we did Chromebook for the middle, or Chrome for the middle school, to stay with one operating system so they can all be run together, or that doesn't work like that?
We'll still be, at some point down the road, evaluating or piloting additional mobile devices at the middle school in addition to the Chromebooks.
Okay.
So that was kind of an initial step because we wanted to start them on the pilot, but we also were needing those for the some of the testing requirements that we had discussed.
Yeah.
So we will be piloting the Apple, the iPad Air, and the Android device in the middle school at a later date as well. So it's the Android tablet and the Google Chromebook have similar operating systems as far as the management and things go. The Androids have apps, and the Chrome uses primarily web-based sites and things to do what it needs to do. So we are dealing with different operating systems. We already have the Apple iPads in the schools, and we have a few of the Android devices, and we have some of the Chromebooks. We're already dealing with all 3 of these in limited bases and managing them around the district. We're just trying to get a feel for what's going to be the best device for each age group or each level, so that to help them to get an idea of which direction they'd like to go before they have to make a big purchase.
Okay.
Not all of them have anything right now, so.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyone else, Mrs. Jarvis?
I had the same question.
Oh, okay. President Burton?
There are questions over here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. On the iPad, I understand that you've got the engraving on there. I'm sure it's just so we can kind of keep track of them a little easier. But I was wondering if they were charging anything extra for that? Or
No, the engraving is free on all the iPad devices. So we've been pretty much doing on any order that we've been doing with those. We still asset tag them and put the other information that we would on any other device.
Right.
It's just kind of an added level of security having that on there. So, and since it was free, we figured
Free
why
is
not?
always good. I was just more curious than anything, but I understand having them there is important too, so,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Questions? What kind of warranty do we get with them, Tim?
Typically, they've got a 1-year warranty. That's one of the things we looked at and we'll probably reconsider when we move into the main purchase. There are extended warranties and accidental damage warranties and things like that can be purchased for all these devices. But we're hoping that during this trial period, we'll be able to get a feel for what kind of a loss and breakage and that we have to try to determine if those costs are worth it, especially for the accidental damage policies that are out there. Because you have to have a certain amount of loss to make it worth your while to purchase those accidental plans. So we figure we've got some rough numbers from other districts that have done similar things, but we'd like to see what we end up with.
We've looked at some of the warranties, and initially it looks as if you would have to be replacing about 20% of your devices in order to break even on the warranties.
Yeah.
And so we want to give this pilot a try and see what what the damage or what the breakage is on the devices before we commit to an extended warranty.
Typically,
It might be better for us just to replace them than to purchase the warranty.
Warranties are more costly than they are beneficial to.
Right. And what we've seen or what we've heard from other districts is somewhere in the 7 to 10% range for damage, theft, and loss in general. But it just depends. A lot of those are 1-to-1 where the kids are taking them home as well, so.
Anyone else? President Burton?
And you just mentioned home, just so the public is aware, these are, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are to be kept at school. These are not to be taken home by students. Is that still correct?
Yes, that's our understanding, that they will be carts that will be available in the classrooms and in our schools for use.
Okay, all right. Also, on the second page, second entry, I assume where it says 16 gigabyte, should that also say 32? Where it's the line for the 2 additional
Yes, that is correct. It should
Okay.
say 32 and not 16.
And the
Okay.
price is correct
The
there.
price is
Okay,
correct.
that's what I thought. If I figured it was
Yep.
lost in the last minute change there.
Yes, thank you.
And then one other question. If we have teachers testing out 3 different systems, will those teachers who are using them, because I assume these will be 3 separate groups of teachers that are testing the 3 pieces of technology?
Same 3 teachers rotating through each one, so each one has a chance to evaluate
All
each
3 of
device.
them.
That's what I was getting at.
Yes.
Will they have a chance to compare one to the other?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all righty. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Dr. Leo?
Just a comment, maybe the obvious, but, the technology portion of the bond issue was a very, very big portion, and certainly something that our community and our staff were very excited about as we look at the overall big bond issue picture. So we're really excited about getting some of these computers now, some of the mobile devices into our classrooms to test out. So just wanted to say we're excited. Excited to be moving into that portion of our bond issue implementation.
It's okay, go ahead.
Oh, I was
Mrs.
going to say, President Laura, is this on the regular agenda for January 12th?
I would say that we put this on
Okay,
the regular
sorry.
agenda.
Oh, that's okay, that's okay. I just have a question in reference to, if we're gonna implement this through 2016, are we gonna be able to keep up with the changes in technology since it goes so quickly? Will the computers that we're buying now and notebooks that we're buying now be adequate? Or we never know what next year's gonna bring, but.
Right, there's always going to be changes, there's always going to be something new. This accounts really for a very small portion of what
Right.
the overall purchase will be. Typically, you see a life expectancy of 3 years, but in the schools, 5. The way we typically, we squeeze every bit out of them that we can. And that was part of the reason too for upping the iPad to the 32, to make sure we have room for future updates. They've been pretty good about keeping the older devices up to date with the new operating systems. The additional memory will give us that ability. We didn't necessarily choose to upgrade the Android device because those have the ability to be upgraded with internal memory, slots that you can add memory to later. So they have the ability to be upgraded where the iPads didn't, which is why we chose to make that change now to help buy us a little extra life.
Wonderful, okay, great, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, and this will be placed on the regular agenda for January 12th, and we will have a vote then.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our second item in the Finance Committee is the purchase of mobile devices for Emerson Middle School. And that comes from Title I funds. Ms. Ellis.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, this is a recommendation to purchase additional mobile devices for use at Emerson Middle School using their Title I funds. Last month, the Board of Education approved the purchase of Chromebooks to be piloted in our middle schools, and as a result of that approval, Emerson Middle School is requesting additional Chromebooks, and they would like to use these Chromebooks in 2 Title I settings in their school. The first setting is to replace the HP desktop computers that are used in a success strategy. These desktop computers are about 8 years old. The new Chromebooks will allow students to learn a new set of skills using a laptop computer versus a desktop computer, where the keyboard is part of the laptop and the students are using a touchpad for a mouse. They'll be using some different keyboarding skills that are part of a laptop versus a desktop. And the computers are 8 years old and need to be replaced. The second setting is, these are going to be used by a team of 3 ELA teachers who are teaching a ELA class designed for students who struggle in reading and writing. And they're going to use these laptops to help students gain some of the skills that they need to transition from paper and pencil composing, their writing, to composing using technology skills. And so the cart that they're requesting will be rotated among the 3 teachers who teach the ELA support class. So the recommendation that we're making is to purchase Additional mobile devices, that they are the same ones that we recommended for the middle school pilot, and that is the Samsung Chromebook Notebook 2. Requesting 72 of those, along with the 72 management license. Again, this is a one-time purchase, allows us then to manage in mass these devices from one site, and then 2 storage or charging carts. Each cart will house 36 notebooks. One of the carts will be used for the success strategy class, and the other one will be shared among the 3 ELA teachers who teach these the ELA class designed for struggling readers and writers. This brings the total cost for the mobile devices, licenses, and carts to $25,493.52. The funds from this purchase will come from the Emerson Middle School Title I budget. And since the vendor is Troxel, which is one of the REMC vendors for Chromebooks, no additional bids are needed. If you have any questions or comments, I would be pleased to respond to them.
Ms. Bonnefield?
Emerson is, and I'm not sure what the right,
Emerson is a school-wide Title I
That's what I-
program. Yes.
so all the kids can.
So
use it.
all the students in those classes would be eligible to use them, yes.
Okay.
Anyone else? Okay.
Okay. Regular.
We'll put this on the regular agenda?
Yes, please.
Okay. This will be placed on the regular agenda for the January 12th meeting, and we'll bring it up for a vote then.
All right.
Thank you very
much.
Ms. Ellis. Our third item is community forums for budget. Dr. Leopold?
Yes, we have coming around to you a proposed outline of the budget conversations that we want to have with our community that are upcoming. As you know, we have discussed, you have discussed as a board, the interest in getting and garnering additional feedback from the community as you prepare for your budget deliberations into the future, and as we continue to talk about budgets that have been very, very tough for school districts across the state of Michigan. Of course, as you know, the legislature passed a roads bill in December that may provide some relief to local public schools next year. But that is, of course, a ballot proposal that we will not know the answer to until May. And so we still have to do our planning for next school year with a budget that, as you know, we've been working extremely hard to protect and preserve programs for our students, but it has gotten increasingly more difficult as time goes on. And so we talked about wanting to go to the community, getting feedback from them prior to your deliberations. And so what I have in front of you is a proposed outline of how we can do that. It's based on the community forums that were very successful that we held a few years back, both with our bond issue and for budget conversations. And so much of this is following that same format. But I do want to go through it with you tonight. You can see that on each page it's marked draft. If you have suggestions or ideas, please throw them out there so we can make changes to the overall game plan, because the first forum is coming up on January 15th, which is 10 days away. January 20th is the second forum, and we would like to also schedule a forum for staff, and we'll talk about that as we move forward. So again, what you see in front of you is an agenda. And so I'll cover the agenda real quickly, but we'll get into more of the meat of how the evening will flow. We're looking at about an hour-and-a-half meeting where we'll start out with a half-hour presentation where we'll do welcome and introductions. And then Lisa will cover a presentation as she's done in the past, where she will review the district's financial condition, past trends, and future budget projections, and I'll talk about that more in a little bit. So she'll do that. We'll allow the people from the community that are there to come and ask questions about the overall financial picture of the district, because we think it's imperative to get good feedback that they have a good understanding of where our budget's been, what we've already done, and where we're looking at moving in the future. So we'll have a presentation That will be about a half hour, which will allow us then to have small group discussion where board members will take small groups of community members, and you can have more specific small group discussions where we will get the input from the community. And so again, I'll cover what that will look like here as we move forward. So that's the overall agenda plan, an hour and a half meeting, half-hour presentation, getting people in, welcoming them, and then getting them into the small groups, and then breaking into small groups of about 10 to 12 people with individual board members, where you will then hear the input from the staff, and we'll set aside, or not staff, but community members, and we'll set aside about an hour for that, okay? So if you go to your next page, and again, you think about the first item on the agenda, review of district financial condition, past trends, and future budgets. The format that we're looking at sharing information, again, really trying to create a nice solid base of information for those community members that are participating. We want to start with just a little bit of background on school funding and Proposal A, and what's really pressuring school districts when they hear school districts that are struggling with budgets and having to consider budget reductions and revenue enhancements and so on. And so I'll give a little bit of background, reminding people that Proposal A basically took funding out of the local school district's hands for the general operating purposes and put it into the state's hands. And so the enrollment and the foundation allowance, state mandated retirement costs are really the pressure points for local school districts when it looks at their overall funding picture. And so we want to create that base of information and then share historical information that outlines how that's impacted the Livonia Public Schools. And so outlining our enrollment trends, which you know has been on the decline for several years. We also want to outline the state enrollment trends, which has been on the decline for those same number of years. As we've talked about in the past, our enrollment trends have matched pretty much to a T what's happened across the state of Michigan. Talk about what's happened with our funding per student. And of course, you know what's happened with that. We want to make sure, again, to create the base for those people there, that knowledge of here's what our funding was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, here's what it is now. And then that will paint the picture of what our revenues have been over the last many years, and also our fund balance. And of course, as you know, we've been utilizing our fund balance to save programs for kids. And so we'll be able to outline all that as sort of a historical picture for people to say, oh, okay, that's how we got to where we're here today. Next, then, we'll talk about future projections and outline again those key things that impact us, and that if you're only getting a $50 per student increase, or a $0 per student increase, or a $5 per student increase, or a student per student reduction, as we've received in some of the past years, when that's happened along with ongoing enrollment decline, which again we've described many times, you lose one student in one classroom in every school, you can't reduce your costs, but we're down millions of dollars in revenue. Walking through those projections, what that looks like on an annual basis for school districts, and talk again about that increased mandated retirement cost that is out of our control, how those things impact our budget every year, and why we're continuing to look at less revenue every year, even though we sometimes hear that there's more revenue at the state level. So we want to, again, paint that picture of here's where we were 7 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, here's the trends that we've seen, here's where we're at today, and when you look into the future, if these projections are the same, these are the kinds of issues we're looking at financially every year, and so that's why we're here coming to get feedback from you. So want to lay that out then, and then we'll have a lot of other information for them, again, to create hopefully a good base of information for them when they're either providing input or asking questions. So we'll break down our major expenditure areas of the budget. We'll have information outlining the cost of our general education teachers, our special education program, our special education support services and classrooms, what it costs for our media centers. These are major areas of the budget. The facility costs, that's a major portion of our district, is facility maintenance and operations. Our transportation costs, what we spend each year for transportation, extracurricular activities, the overhead costs we have to run the school district, having a human resources department, an IT department, business office, those types of things. And also security, school administration. We'll break down these areas as major items to show how much we're spending in each of these areas. And then we'll provide some other expenditure information, such as class size ratios, again, utility costs, so they have an idea of how much we spend, because the average person isn't going to know whether we spend $50,000 or $5 million in utilities in our school district. So outline what those utility costs are, overall budgets for supplies, textbooks, materials, non-people type of things, how much money we're spending on that. Again, the retirement expense, an important thing for people to understand when they're looking at our overall budget picture and helping us with feedback is mandated expenditures versus unmandated expenditures. Very, very important. And so, as you know, we've talked about our budget, and a very, very large portion of that is actually tied up in either mandated or required costs. And so the amount of flexibility that we even have is pretty limited when you look at our overall budget. So we want to be able to get that kind of information out at this meeting. And then talk about the items in the budget that are self-sustaining. So people may say, well, my gosh, why are you guys offering a before and after childcare program? That costs a lot of money. Why would you do that? And we can say, well, you can take that one off the list because we actually charge a fee for people to participate in that program, and so those costs are covered. Well, my gosh, why do you guys run a community education program or an adult education program? Because we receive funds either through tuition or through grants to pay for those programs. So it's, again, important to identify those things so people can start putting these pieces into the appropriate thought process in regards to what we actually have control over to look at to balance our budget. So we want to provide that information to them. And then we also want to spend some time talking about what we've done to date. Because someone could look at the budget and so, for example, say, well, my gosh, your utility budget's $3 million. That seems like a lot of money. Could you reduce that by 10%? And so we want to tell them up front that we already have a utility savings program in place in our school district. And because we implemented that, we've reduced our cost by about 25% in our overall utilities. And so we've already thought about that particular item. And we're doing upgrades through our bond issue to the overall HVAC systems and the temperature controls and so on to make sure that the machinery is actually running smoothly to actually, to again save money in utilities. So we want to provide that kind of information also so people have a handle on, well, if you get this much money in your supply budget, could you reduce it by another 5%? Well, we could, but we've already reduced it by 45% over the last 10 years. And so this helps, again, to put that context in place when you're looking at what you guys look at every year as we're setting this budget up. And so we want to outline those things that we've done to enhance revenue, to save money, let people know, and as you guys know, we're into the tens of millions now in regards to cost-saving revenue enhancement over the past many years. And so we want to lay that out so people do understand that we've made reductions in a variety of different areas already to come to this point to where we're at today. And then just sort of bring it to a close at the end again with, the big picture of if you have fewer students and if your revenue per student isn't going up, you're basically looking at pretty much a deficit going into the next year, and that's why we continue to have these conversations every year. So a lot of background information that we want to be able to provide to have people have a good solid feel for, okay, that's how the budget's broken up. That's where you guys have already reduced expenditures. That's how much revenue you guys have lost in the last 5 years. That good background information so when they're sitting down and having the opportunity to get into the more details of ideas, they have a good base in regards to the types of things that have led up to where we're at today. Does that make sense? If there's anything that you think of that when you look at these lists that you say, Randy, maybe you want to make sure that they know about this, or could Lisa add this to the presentation, or don't forget to tell people about this. Like, for example, I think it might have been Mrs. Burton mentioned about the funded versus unfunded mandates the last time we had this conversation. So if you have any of those kind of ideas for us, please share them with me. Again, this is all in draft form. We'll make sure to incorporate it into our presentation. Okay? Liz has got one already.
I think it would be helpful to have kind of a pipeline that shows where the dollars come from and where the dollars end up. Dollars from some sources must be used for certain expenses, and that the dollars from different accounts are not interchangeable. We can't take money from one account and use it for another kind of expense. Our hands are very much tied in where this money comes from and where it goes.
Yeah, so highlighting in our budgets that, for example, when we get money in for our food service program, it has to go to the food service program. When we get money in for the special education center program from the county, we can't use that to reduce class size in our general. We don't
Right.
have the control over those funds.
Sinking fund dollars can't be used for supplies.
There you go, exactly. Okay.
Any other concerns or questions? Mrs. Bonnefield?
Dr. Leopold, one of the things that I find helpful is the explanation of how much funding is being given to the schools and how much funding actually makes it into the classroom. I think the state has they have given more money to education, but I think what people don't understand is that those dollars are not hitting our classrooms. They're going in and out for retirement money, and just how little of that, it might be $1 billion, but how much of that has actually helped our classrooms.
Yeah, I think when we do that historical graph of our revenues, that's going to paint that clear picture of, but it's a perfect point, though. I'm right on board with what you're saying. Painting that picture of, okay, well, I heard this, how did this play out in Livonia? And we can actually show, here's what our general fund revenues have been over the last several years. And again, explaining the fact that every time we lose a student, doesn't mean we can reduce cost.
Right. Lots of visuals, graphs, and charts make it easy, because numbers are confusing. One other point that I think is important is we talk about teacher layoffs, and just because of the union or contract requirements, that when we lay a teacher off, we're not laying off the teachers up here. We start at the bottom. So by laying off a teacher, sometimes it's a much smaller increment than we think it might be, because we're laying off the newer teachers.
Part of how we get to the.
I think, we've talked about our.
Yeah, we can
average-
incorporate that into explaining to people why when we lose a student, we can't reduce corresponding cost.
Yeah.
And we can give the quick example of, 300 kids is $2.4 million. We might be able to reduce 10 teachers across the school district because the kids don't come in nice 25 to 30 student packets. No, they don't. And so even if you can reduce 10 teachers, you're going to reduce them at the lower end of the pay scale. And so you're never going to save $2.4 million that you've lost in revenue.
Mrs. Jarvis?
I would like to be able to stress to the members of our community what sort of things in our budget we are able to affect a change on, and what sort of things are beyond our control. For example, Proposal A has a big influence on how much money we get in, and the foundation allowance is not a dollar amount that we set, but there are some things we can change and many, many that we cannot.
Yeah, that's part of that Proposal A piece, absolutely.
Mr. Centers?
Just one last thing, you may have mentioned it early on. With the community investing so much in the bond, just reiterating that.
That source of funds, use of funds issue.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I thought you just went out and asked for a bunch of money. Well, yes, we did.
I received
but we
that
can
just
only use that
recently,
money to fix our facilities.
Right.
We cannot use that money to operate beyond the daily operation costs.
Thank you.
Well, and sorry, in extension of that, we can't go to the public, that not only
Right, for general operating
was that
purposes.
bond money only for operating, for buildings, facilities, and technology, we can't go ask for operating dollars on top of that.
Correct, yeah. Those are all very important points explaining that, giving that background.
Mrs. McDonald?
Thank you. Dr. Leopold, when would you like feedback from us on this document, so you can have it ready for next week?
Yeah, the sooner the better, because, we're gonna be raring to go on January 15th, so. we don't-
Thursday would be acceptable
Oh,
for
yeah,
you?
yeah, if you get it to me by the end of this week, that'd be fine.
Okay. And also, I was wondering if the board can have a copy of your presentation that you're going to present to the community as far as the dollars and cents, so we can have it to review before we go into our meetings, because you know how that goes, somebody's always going to ask questions, so I think that would be helpful for
Yeah, and
us.
we'll want to try to get those questions out in this
Right, I understand,
portion.
but just in
Because
case.
really, in your time in there, you want to make sure that you're hearing from people in regards to their ideas.
Right.
as opposed to answering questions. But in those conversations, something
Right,
may
I
come
mean,
up.
I think
Well, I
it would
heard
be good
this.
for us to understand too.
Mhm.
So, just my thought.
Okay. President Burke.
That still sounds weird. Dr. Lepa, one thing that I've been asked, and I'm sure the rest of us have been over the last few months, is following the election season and the barrage of commercials, folks heard there's more money for education and there's less money for education. Which is right? I mean, I've been asked this direct question, and you've alluded to it several times, but if you could hit on for folks near that beginning when you're in your
Yep.
information presentation, how you can make the statement that there's more money for education and where there is less money for K-12 education. But if we can make that clear to folks, so, because a lot of people are still very confused.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else? Mrs. Jervis.
Since you brought up questions that people ask, the one that I get all the time is, where's the lottery money? They expect it to be a line item. We need to explain to people how that works and how the school aid fund works.
Yeah, that will be that first portion. And we're not, what I don't want this to be, just telling you my thoughts on this, I don't want this to be a 45-minute discussion on how schools are funded and not allowing the people who, some people may be coming in with some of that background information, not the opportunity to do what they came to do, which is to provide us feedback in regards to our budget planning. So, but I've got these points mentioned, and we'll make sure to hit those in some way. But that's going to be a 5 to 10 minute piece of that, because we really want to show those trends, to show what's happened because of all these pieces of Proposal A. We want to clarify the source in, source out piece. We want them to understand the components of the budget. So there's a lot there to cover. So we'll be being pretty succinct about those things, because we really want them to have a good big picture understanding and not have them feel like they just took a class, if that makes sense. Yeah.
School funding
Yeah.
101.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
tried.
Yep. Yeah, but those are excellent suggestions, and we'll be able to incorporate, I think, every one of those into that presentation. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, and then,
So that's the first
right.
part of it. So that's that first half hour where we're down. We'll get down, create that good base, give them good information about how schools are funded, what the Livonia Public Schools budgets look like, what our history has been, what we're facing coming up down the road. Hopefully get a good base of understanding what we've done, so they've got that good base, and then we'll go into the actual our portions where they're going into the small groups. And so what I want to do on page 4 and 5 is cover how that will look. And if you remember last time, I'm trying to remember, Mark was there, Colleen was there. I think out of this group, I think that would have been just the two when we went through those particular. Eileen was there for the bond issue ones that we did.
Right.
Yes. And so what we did is we gave the board talking points. So when you went into your small groups, everybody was making sure to following the same process, and that you were, so we could be consistent in regards to the information we were getting from the community. So that's what I, again, walk through this with you in regards to what that will look like and what that will feel like now that you're into the small group rooms and you're in the process of listening for the input. So again, you'll just start out by welcoming them and thanking them for coming, and let them know that you're here to listen to them about their input about possible future budget decisions. You'll highlight that they've just received a lot of background information on our finances, and now it's our time to hear from them. And so for them to have a good understanding and, again, a good base, I'll probably spend a couple minutes before they go into the actual breakout session saying, here's what we're going to do. And then the first thing you're going to do in that breakout session after welcoming them is saying, here's what we're going to do again. So they have a good feel for how this is going to go. So, and again, suggestions are welcome in regards to how this will flow, but pretty similar to what we've done the past year. So first, this is how so we'll go into bullet point 3 here, which is how we're going to handle the meeting. We want to hear from as many of you as possible. So we talked about this a little bit last time we got together. What we'd like to do is ask them to contemplate possible budget ideas and attempt to prioritize them, because that's what you all have to do. All that information that they're gonna get ahead of time about here's how much we spend on transportation, and here's how much we spend fixing the buildings, and here's how much we spend on our special education programs. They're gonna hear all that. And as you know, when you make those decisions, you have to then prioritize what's going to remain when you're looking at budget ideas, or how are we gonna raise extra money if we can to address our budget needs. So we're gonna ask them to do a little bit of that too. And so it says here, and you'll just tell them this, you'll go following the script, you'll receive a list of ideas on a sheet, and that'll come in a second. We understand you may need more information, but we're asking for your initial thoughts. That's an important point, because they're not gonna be able to understand this as well as you, who, look at our budgets every couple months and, review bills every time we come and sit here and talk. All the different funds and how they're broken out. We're not expecting them to have a great grasp of every single detail of the budget. What we are asking them to do, from their perspective, is to say, here's what's important to me, here's what's important if I had to prioritize, and here's the feedback I want to give to you in that regard. So we want to make sure that that's clear to them, that we understand that they may need more information. How many teachers do you have? How many maintenance guys do you have? You may need some more information, but we're asking for your initial big picture thoughts here on big items. And so what we're going to do is you're going to ask them to do this. You're going to give them the sheet. They're going to go and do some prioritization on their own. And then after you spend a few minutes on this, we'll go around the room and allow each of you the opportunity to speak. First, regarding any overall thoughts you have on the sheet you completed when they went through and tried to do this prioritization. But then also on anything else they would like to share with us, because it's not limited just to the things that we've done, that we want some feedback on. So you want to make sure that that's clear for them. And again, that's how we've done this in the past. We make sure that everybody in the room has the opportunity to have their time to speak. And so we've all been in groups before, and not to anybody's detriment, or not to, being critical of anybody, but sometimes people end up controlling a conversation, or it gets caught in a particular issue gets discussed, and when you miss a chance to hit something else that may have been very important. That's why in the past we've always structured these so we allow each person to say, okay, what do you want to share right now? Okay, thank you very much, and you go around the room and you do that. And so that would be one step that you'll describe to them, that second bullet. The third bullet then is for those of you who would like to write down your thoughts, either in addition to sharing or instead of verbally sharing, because everybody has a different comfort level. We're going to provide feedback forms for them to do that. We make it clear to them that their comments will be recorded on the flip chart. We'll have recorders there. You will not have to do that. You'll just be facilitating the conversation. And we've done this in the past too. We'll have a staff member there that will be there to be the recorder. So when they start going around the room, we get all of their ideas down. And we do collect all those. We type them up. We put them out on our website so we can show people, at the community meeting on January 15th, here are the suggestions we received from the community, just like we did in the bond issue and with our prior budget meetings. And then what you'll do then, after you go around the room, okay, so you'll go around once, and then you'll open it up. Instead of opening up for a conversation at that point in time, you'll want to make sure to go around the room once to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak, and then after that's done, you can do it again. So you can start again and say, okay, well, now you've had a chance to hear everybody and their ideas and their thoughts. Maybe it prompted a thought in your mind, and you can go around the room again and get feedback from people so they have another opportunity to respond, and that will create a little bit more of a conversation in the room. So that will be the piece, and then, of course, you'll tell them that you'll take responsibility for keeping them moving forward to make sure within that hour you get the feedback they have, okay? So please keep your comments brief and focused. You'll ask them that. So everybody has a chance. And then you'll ask them do they have any questions about the process. So hopefully after hearing it briefly from me and then hearing it in a little bit more detail from you, they'll have a pretty good handle on it. But if they have any questions about, what did you say about this? When am I going to get to speak? You'll be able to answer those questions at this point in time. Okay? Colleen.
One suggestion, the second bullet point, where it says, first regarding any overall thoughts on the sheet you completed, then on anything else you would like.
Mm-hmm.
I assume since we're limited to 1 hour, that we're looking at during that hour for any other thoughts you'd like on the budget. And perhaps if you have thoughts on another topic, we'll stay
this
around
is-
after the meeting, and we'd be happy to discuss other topics with you if you care
Absolutely.
to.
This is purely budget
is-
related.
right.
We don't want to hear about concern they have about the bond issue or
Right.
something about grading or.
And if they do,
Yes.
we'd be happy to hang around after
Sure.
the meeting to discuss that with you and get your thoughts. But during this hour, we're looking at just budget.
So I will add on there about the budget at the end of that sentence in your talking points. Okay. Okay, so everybody with me so far? So you've got them in the room, you thank them for being there, you've talked about the process that you're gonna follow, ask them any questions about the process, and then you'll go ahead and get them started. So what you do at that point in time, you'll say you have received information about our budget in the presentation. I'm now handing out a list of possible items to help address our possible budget deficit. We are asking you to put yourself in the place of the school board, of a school board member, and give us feedback. Again, because I think some of the times when we've done this in the past, people will just come and tell you what they don't want to have happen. Which is fine, that's great, you'll want that feedback, believe me, you'll want that feedback, and it's absolutely 100% okay for people to share that with you in these meetings. But you also want to put it in the context of, okay, we hear that you don't want X, but, well, what should we do then? And that's all part and parcel of this process. So that's why it's sort of this issue of, okay, think about you being a board member for a second. You're going to have to make some difficult decision here. How are we going to do that? And so at that point in time, when you're at step 5 and you explain this paragraph, then you're going to go over the document with them, okay? So if I can go to page 6 and 7, if you look at page 6 and 7, real quick, okay? And actually, let's look at page 7 first, okay? I've got it backwards here. Okay? So you're now going to describe to them the process that they're going to go through here. So you're going to say, you're going to go through this with them and say, and we'll have this all for you right there. We are looking forward to your input to help the district prioritize budget solutions. Think of yourself as a school board member who will need to determine which of the difficult choices still maintain the best educational programs for the students and the entire school community. In the past, we've used 3 guiding questions to help. One has been, what is the impact of this action on student learning? What is the impact of this budget decision on keeping LPS attractive to our current families? And what is the impact of this budget decision on attracting families to move here? And again, I just put a note there, questions 2 and 3 really recognize that if you make a decision where you've made the school district less desirable, then you have to take into consideration the consequences of that, because there may be people that decide to go into another community then. That's all part and parcel of the things that we've talked about in the past when we talk about budget priorities. And so for, just as an example, so if we're the only school district that does not have K-12 transportation, okay, you have to ask yourself the question, is that going to be a deciding factor when people think about moving in your community? And so those are the kinds of things that we want them to think about, and why we have those as sort of those guiding questions. So you'll walk through these questions with them and say, this is, this sort of has helped us in the past when we do this prioritization. You can be thinking that. And then, so what we're going to ask them to do is take a look at the list, which is on page 6, okay? Take a look at the list and pick 3 items in the list that they would be most willing to implement, okay? And they write most right next to that item. And then pick 3 items that you would least be willing to implement and put least in the blank space. And so again, least implement means this is the last thing I'd want you to do. Last thing I'd want you to do is to cut K-12 transportation. Okay, I'm going to put least on there. That's one of my 3 least, okay, as an example. And most would be, well, if you want to sell, I'm just giving examples right now. If you thought you could help out by selling some property in the school district, that would be I'd be most willing to support that. You follow what I'm saying? So, so that will give them the opportunity to make some choices. And we went back and forth on this a little bit. We thought, should they number it from 1 to 15, highest priority, lowest priority? But the difficulty with that is you're starting to make it almost too numeric, and it's not as much in getting the feel. It's really trying to get that good feel of what people are thinking, as opposed to this ended up being a 3.4, this ended up being a 5.2. You start losing it then. And so we went back and forth on that and said, that doesn't feel good. let's ask them to look at the list, pick the 3 on the list that they'd be most willing to implement. What would be the 3 on the list that are least willing? That starts to get them into that, at least that priority thinking. And if you can see on page 6, what I've hired, we've given a lot of examples here of things that are the handful of non-mandated things that we have left to talk about. And so we've listed them there, and I want you to take a good look at those, and if you have other suggestions that you want us to add on there, we'd be happy to do that. But note on the bottom here, we have other, and it says list. And so if I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, well, I really appreciate you, helping us out with this, but the last thing I'd want to see happen is X, and you don't even have it on the list here. Okay? Well, we want them to have the opportunity to write it down there. And then if they want to put least or most on there, they can. Okay? Now you see then back on page 7 here, so we said that was the paragraphs with picking the 3 that are most willing, 3 that they were least willing. The next paragraph, and you want to highlight this as you're explaining this to them before they start filling it out. Note that these are larger items that generates more substantial either revenue or savings. The school district regularly evaluates individual positions and expenditures and makes reductions where possible. And so what we don't want to have people try to do is to think about the 1,500 full-time jobs that we have in the school district to make the place run, and thinking about every single job. You could be studying this for 10 weeks. We really want them to be thinking big picture. What about maintenance and operations? What about transporting kids? What about elementary class size? Those are the big items. What about revenue items such as a limited schools of choice or selling property? Those are the big types of items that we want them to be thinking about, as opposed to, I think you have a part-time employee over at X building that you might be able to get by without. They're welcome to list that down now. I don't want to, you're not getting discouraged. They can give us any idea. But we really want them thinking in a big picture standpoint. Does that make sense to everybody? In regards to really keeping the conversation focused for good feedback, because what we're hoping is to get good feedback out of this as we're going into future budget deliberations. And so I want to keep them focused on those big picture items, and that's the types of items that we have listed there. So that's an important thing to explain to them. Go ahead, Dan.
There's one thing that maybe I would like to see included here, and maybe it's some of our special programs we run here. We know that things like this
Kappa,
the
ACAP
Medical Center,
program.
ACAP.
Yeah, what I will do, that's a good point. Actually, I meant to sort of cover that on the item that says eliminate, that should be secondary. But I'm going to say elective offerings where possible, because those are where we have a position or two to run a specific program above and beyond the normal allocation. You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
And so what I'm going to do there is put in parentheses specific programs.
Okay, great.
Does that make sense to everybody? That's a great suggestion.
Yeah.
Randy, when you're putting, just to make it easier, instead of saying like eliminate secondary, can you put just the grade levels in to eliminate one of the questions? 9, 12, okay, it's
7, 12.
just, it makes it easier for whoever's reading it.
Like that.
And I'm not by any means suggesting those are things, obviously we're proud of those things.
Oh,
but
absolutely, but if you want everybody to know what is non-mandated in a choice,
Sure.
Everything's on the table, so.
Right, and I also think it will allow us to kind of gauge the feel of the community, how much they value those, how much it means to them keeping their kids in our public school program.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Should the second bullet, or the second line be eliminate all unmandated?
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
Let's just eliminate it.
Yeah, we cannot eliminate mandated transportation, that's a great point.
And my other question is, and I don't know if this is gonna work or not, or if it's even feasible, but
Sure.
is there any way to put an estimated dollar value?
Yes.
Oh, we are, we will.
Thank you. Yes, we will.
Okay, because.
Every one of these
trans-
items will have an estimated.
Transportation is $4 million, getting
Yep.
rid of,
Right.
the
Yeah,
ACAP
people might be
program
thinking they're talking about a
might
$4
be-
million item, and they're talking about a $100,000 item. Absolutely.
So when they're saying, what's palatable to them, and we're telling them we need
Yes.
to cut $10 million out of the budget,
Mhm.
well, your three most, does that add up to $10 million?
But and it's okay that we're not asking them to come up with a dollar
understand that,
amount.
but I mean, there has to be a concept.
But you're right,
of-
conceptually, they have to understand that they're not choosing three things that add up to $75,000, and we have a multi-million-dollar issue.
Right, and I think that's gonna help
To your
with the bigger picture thinking of,
Yes.
okay, maybe
Great
we
point.
can eliminate a $20,000 a year parapro somewhere if we can
Exactly.
have one left.
Right, gets into that paragraph. I think that's a great point,
Okay, 20
Tammy.
grand, that's great, it all adds up, but
Mhm.
when you're talking about $4 or $5 million,
Right.
that's an awful lot of parapros that we don't even.
Or even if it's, if it's $2 million that we're talking about, that's still a lot more than a couple $20,000,
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mrs. Laura?
Yes.
Dr. Lepa, we may need to spend a quick couple minutes in these meetings telling folks what an EST is and what an SAP is.
Yeah.
They probably won't know. And
Nope.
even with
Lisa mentioned that today.
even if we spell it out with their full title, they still won't know.
Yep.
Another one that jumped out at me is limited schools of choice. Folks
Mhm.
probably don't catch the word limited and know its significance and think that when we talk about schools of choice, we're talking about opening the floodgates for
Right.
one and all, and that's not what we have in mind.
Yeah, so we can give those examples of the ACAP program where we've already taken care of our kids, and if we have a couple of extra slots in a classroom, then we would open it up, or at a career center, after we've taken care of our kids, that we would take in kids from other school districts, if there are spots open, or a handful of kids at the early grades as we did this year.
Right.
Yeah, so that would be one you'd want to spend a little bit more time to make sure they understand what we're talking about there.
Dr. Leopold, do you anticipate the board going through all of these items, or just some of those ones that you feel may need some explanation?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is, because some do and some don't. So I will try to put in words more explanation on this, so everybody's saying the same thing. I think that would be helpful.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've got those items.
Yeah, most folks in the community won't know what non-mandated transportation
Yeah.
is, even though we get it.
Extracurricular activities, some people
Yep.
may or may not know what that is. So, yeah, I'll go through these with the cabinet, and we'll make sure that we'll walk through everyone and say, okay, is this clear enough? Do we need to spell this out more? And then I'll get it to you guys. I think it's a good idea from Eileen that I get this to you guys ahead of time so you can look at it. So if you have follow-up questions, we can make quick adjustments.
Would it be helpful or maybe there's not enough time during that general half-hour discussion?
To go through the list.
So everybody's hearing the same thing.
If we, I think we
Yeah.
could
That might be-
actually. I
that
mean,
may be a
yeah.
good idea.
Because but I would suggest, and I think you're not suggesting this. I would suggest that you go over it just like this again.
Yeah.
But I think if they hear it 2 or 3 times, yes, then it'll be easier for them as opposed to some people, which we've seen it 100 times when we have community forums, say, what do they mean by that again? And yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Also, is it our thought or our intent to collect these sheets?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, so we will not ask them to put their names on it, so they won't have to be sharing any information, but we will collect it. Yep.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Just a concern, I think this is a very useful project. My only concern with it is that I'm terrified that somebody's gonna take this list and run with it.
And think that this is what's getting cut.
And start
Yep.
the rumor mill about what, so.
Yeah,
I don't know
unfortunately,
if
there's
we
nothing we can do about
okay,
that.
put anything in there that,
Well,
we're just
absolutely, yeah,
throwing-
yeah,
we're just
absolutely, we can say
Title
that.
on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can emphasize that for sure.
We're just
This is
throwing-
not a list of things that we think we should reduce, we don't wanna reduce any of this stuff, we may not reduce any of this stuff.
We're just.
But at the end of the day, we've got some difficult decisions to make, and if we have to do this, we want your feedback. And so you're right, I think we need to be very, very clear about that.
And just.
And emphasize it multiple occasions. No, you're 100% right.
Our
And having said
intention
that,
is-
some people will still go out and say, yeah.
We can only do so much,
Yep.
but just as long as we're clear on the documents.
That's a great
You know,
point.
somebody says something, we can pull the document out and go, look, right here, it says, You know, we are not eliminating these things. We're asking what your priorities are, and when we need to make cuts, we need to cut what's most palatable to our community.
Right. Yep, because we are really in an ideas mentality at that point in time. Certainly, there's some legwork that we need to do to create a base for them. But, you know,
Well, and
we may get 3 other items on the list that people come up with that we say, okay, well, that may make more sense than anything we had on the list.
President Burton?
Along the lines of what Mrs. Bonnefield said, something even in a title or just a one sentence at the top.
Yep,
So that if someone does
absolutely.
walk out with this document, it
Mhm.
doesn't, it can't be, well, as
Yeah,
much as you
can't
could
be,
say.
here's the cut list.
Right, exactly. But something explaining at the top. that
Absolutely,
it's-
yeah, that's gonna be ultra important, because again, we don't know how this is all gonna play out in May, and who knows what we may or may not need to do. Yeah, but we have to be prepared, so that's why we're going through this process, so.
And it's
I
important
think
to
those.
get the community feedback. This
Absolutely.
is a super important process. It just, we don't need the rumor mill started
Yes.
to put
Yeah.
a bad spin on what we're trying to do a good
Right.
thing with community
Yes.
involvement.
And, you know, if nothing else, going through this process and having people hear that over multiple times helps to actually cut down the rumor mill as opposed to, actually helps,
Yeah, well, the more
because
we get it
people will
out,
fill the vacuum, so.
Yeah, yes.
Dr. Lepa,
Mm-hmm.
when you're giving the initial intro information, and talking about the potential roads tax, the roads bill that we will be voting on in May, can you let folks know that my understanding is it's $300 million that's earmarked for education in that bill. However, we don't know how it may or may not be divvied up.
Correct, yeah, we can't tell, we can't say that that's gonna solve all the problems, we can't say how much it's gonna help it.
Right.
It's just an issue out there that certainly could impact our budgets in future years.
Right. And even if it passes, it doesn't mean that.
Nope, doesn't mean
it's
we may still have to make
panacea.
some, we still may have to make some tough decisions.
Right.
Maybe not as many, but we still have to make some tough decisions.
Well, if it passes and how they divvy it up, those are two different, very separate questions.
There's no guarantee that any of those dollars will make it into a K-12 classroom.
Mrs.
We're feeling pretty good about it, but you're right, there's no guarantees.
Thank you. Is there a thought to having legislators invited to the forum so that they can see what kind of things we're talking about?
Yes, we're going to invite them to come and to just listen, not to have to be part of the group or participate, but just to hear the conversation. Yep, to come to one or both.
Okay. Anything else? Okay.
Okay, so that covers, if you go back to page 5, so we sort of talked about the whole let's start, you're gonna hand out the sheet, they're gonna go through and fill out, number 6 in, they're gonna take some time to complete the form out. Number 7, then you're gonna go around the room, ask for feedback after they've had a chance to fill that out. Then you're gonna then provide another opportunity to go around the room after they've got a chance to hear from everybody. And then we're pretty much done. And it will take all of an hour. We've all been there. We think, oh, gosh, they might be done quick. No, it'll be an all of an hour. People will have stuff to tell us, and we'll be judiciously taking down that feedback. So it sounds like everybody's on board, big picture with the overall plan here. Some excellent, excellent suggestions and feedback from you all tonight that we'll make sure to implement into the process here. And then we'll get that back out to you, and I think we'll be ready to roll on the 15th.
Dr. Lepa, can you remind the public again how they go about registering if they would like to participate in this?
Yes, what you can do is you can contact Jill Wozniak in our office and just tell her, because you do have to register to participate. So this is on June 15th.
January.
June.
Not yet. Wouldn't that be nice?
Just skip the winter this year.
That's going to be January 15th, and that one is at 7 o'clock. Thank you, Andrea. And then we have one on June 20th. That is
January.
I'm going to keep on trying. January 20th. That will be at 6:30 p.m. And then we also, what I'd like to ask you tonight is we would like to do the staff one also on June 20th at 4:30.
January.
I am really losing it. Okay, so we would like to do, so
That's
we,
why you have all
so you
of us.
have already, you, and I know all board members may not be able to make that, but if we can get some board members, at least some board members to come, because that's early. But it's easier for staff not to go home because they're all over. And so if we can get them close to their time that they leave, we'd like to do the same session for them, January 20th at 4:30, right here in this boardroom. So then, when they're done, because remember, we'll be moving into smaller rooms. They'll be up in the smaller rooms when they're finishing up. That should give us time to get ready for the second community meeting. That sound good to everybody?
Sounds great.
Just to give you a little bit of information, how we've gotten the word out on this so far. Because we do have, as of today, we do have 53 people that have already signed up. So I think that's a good start. Remember, we're going to do another push here after the holidays. And so we have already gotten this information to the Observer, who did a front page story. We did an email blast to all of our LPS email list. We posted it on our LPS Facebook. We have a story on the front page of our LPS website. The Livonia Chamber of Commerce has already put it in their newsletter and their Facebook page. The PTSA Council just got it into their council newsletter that they will get out. And then we've also notified our district communications team. So we've done that to date. And then what we'll do over the next week is the dialogue's coming out this week. And so there's an article in the dialogue, that goes to 50,000 people, and so that gets to everybody. So the dialogue newsletter goes out to the entire community this week. We're going to do a K-6 backpack mail flyer. We're going to do another posting on Facebook. Our principals are getting involved in different ways. They're either sending personal notes home or they're contacting their key communicators in their building to let them know. We'll do one more big district email blast, and then we'll get it on our cable TV. And so I think we've gotten the bases covered by and large of getting the word out. And I think 53 is a good number at this point in time. I would anticipate that we'll have over 100, including the staff, will have well over 100 people that will participate. I think within even just our community, we'll probably be at 100 or over 100. So, and that's pretty good turnout.
The dialogue newsletter will hit the seniors.
Yes, everybody, 50,000 people, that goes to everybody.
What about the senior centers?
We didn't talk about doing that, but we could,
Like
we could do a flyer at the senior center. Yeah, we could do that. Sure, good idea.
Okay, anybody else? Remember that if you have any suggestions or concerns about this, to contact Randy by Thursday.
Perfect.
Okay? All right, great. And President Burton, that is the end of the Finance Committee.
Thank you, and we will now be opening our Policy Committee, and since I had been in charge of that, we are going to be going to Mrs. Laura, who's going to handle policy for us.
Thank you.
You're back on.
It's my night.
It is.
Policy Committee, we have one item on the agenda, and that's state changes to the high school graduation requirements. Mrs. Ellis and Dr. Whoa, I made you a doctor now.
Thank you.
Mr. Archibald.
You were busy over the holidays.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. Much easier than I anticipated.
That's okay, we elevated him that just right.
Yeah.
It's just a night of
You know how to make things happen.
We might as well keep going.
Thank you, and once again, good evening, everyone. Steve Archibald and I are pleased this evening to have this opportunity to share with you changes that have occurred at the state level with the state graduation requirements, also known as the Michigan Merit Curriculum, and to have some discussion with you as to whether we want to reflect these changes in our graduation requirements. I thought I'd begin by giving a little background information. In November of 2006, our Board of Education adopted a new set of graduation requirements that included all of the 16 Michigan Merit Curriculum credits required for graduation. And then in November of 2012, our Board of Education updated our graduation requirements to include 2 credits of world language, because that's when those credits took effect. And so this past summer, our legislators passed 2 bills. They were House Bill 4465 and House Bill 4466 that amended the Michigan Merit Curriculum. While the bills didn't take immediate effect, we do have to, the Board of Education does have to review these changes and decide whether or not we want to incorporate these changes some or all of them into our graduation requirements by March of this school year. And so to help get a big picture of the changes that are in these two bills, we've created a chart which we have shared with our high school principals and our middle school principals and have reviewed these changes with them. And so the proposal for changes to our graduation requirements that we're bringing to you today are after some extensive conversation and reflective thinking and thought process with our secondary administrators. So what I'm going to do is begin at the top of the chart, and I'm going to go from the left to the right, and I'll go across, and then when we're done, Steve has created a chart that shows our current graduation requirements and the changes that we are proposing to them in red so that you could see what they would look like in our graduation requirement, in our board policy. So if you begin at the, does everybody have a copy? Okay, so if we begin at the top on the left and go across to the right, the first column includes the subject areas and the number of credits for each of those subject areas. The second column is the state's high school graduation requirements, also known as the Michigan Merit Curriculum, and what you see highlighted in yellow are the changes that are from the two House bills, 4465 and 4466. The third column is our existing or our current high school graduation requirements for our district, and then the fourth column are the proposed changes that we are making to the graduation requirements based on changes at the state level and also recommendations from our secondary principals. So we'll begin with English Language Arts, and I thought we would go through each of these content areas with you and review the changes at the state level, our current graduation requirements, and the proposed changes. So we're going to start with ELA. There are 4 credits for ELA, and the state has indicated that the courses that we offer for English Language Arts must be aligned to the state benchmarks, and there are state benchmarks for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade ELA. Our current graduation requirements, then, looking at the third column, it's 1 credit of Language Arts 9, 1 credit of Language Arts 10, 1 credit of Language Arts 11, and then 1 additional Language Arts class. There aren't any changes at the state level. The content and the requirements stay the same. The changes that we're proposing are changes that reflect our current class offerings. So we currently offer a 9th grade ELA class, a 10th grade ELA class, but at 11th grade, we do not offer in Language Arts 11, we offer a half a credit of composition and a half a credit of literature. And there are choices for literature classes that students can take. So we're recommending that we make that change to our board policy so it more accurately reflects the classes that students take at the 11th grade.
That's a clarification.
That's really a clarification point. And the same thing is true for our 12th grade. It's not an additional language arts class. It's a choice of several different 12th grade classes that were designed based on the state's 12th grade English language arts benchmarks. So it's really clarifying that there are a series of 12th grade classes that students can select from to fulfill their 4th ELA credit. Okay? Yes, questions?
Do those classes have to be taken in the 12th grade? I mean, if you had a student who was taking one as an 11th grader, would that cover that requirement or not? Or
Well, the content builds and the themes and the disposition statements, so the curriculum spirals and builds from year to year, and I believe most students do take their 12th year, their senior ELA class in their senior year.
Okay. It's not required, but it's just pretty common practice.
Very common practice.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. And many of our students as 11th graders take composition first semester and then take literature second semester in preparation for the Michigan Merit Curriculum because there is a huge writing component on the Michigan Merit exam. Okay. All right, so moving on to mathematics. We have 4 credits of mathematics, that stays the same. The state's graduation requirements, the ones that are remaining the same are Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Those haven't changed. The new piece to the math requirement is that Algebra 2 can be substituted with a career technical education program or curriculum, such as electronics, engineering, computer science, or renewable energy, and in that program or curriculum successfully completing the same content as the Algebra 2 benchmarks that are assessed on the, when they say department, they're really meaning the Michigan Department of Education's prescribed state high school assessment as determined by, department really means Michigan Department of Education. That's the new piece, and then a continuation is that one additional math or math-related credit or course in financial literacy. So when you look at our graduation requirements, we require 4 credits, and it must include geometry, Algebra 1, and Algebra 2, or the equivalent, with a math or math-related class in the student's final year. We're not recommending any changes to our graduation requirements because we currently offer all of the Algebra 2 content in our CTE program already. So our students who take our CTE program are getting their Algebra 2 content through our CTE program. So we're recommending that for mathematics, we keep our language the same. Yes, Mrs. Bonifay.
So in the kids who are just in the high school, not in our career technical, do they have the same opportunity to take one of these other related classes, or there are no related classes?
They still have to, the requirement is for geometry, Algebra 1, and Algebra 2.
But are there any other options for Algebra 2 in the mainstream classrooms?
No. Those content expectations are taught in Algebra 2, and it could be an Algebra 2 class that's taught over a year and a half, because we do have an Algebra 2 class that's taught over 1.5 years versus just a single year. And that gives students who need more time to learn the Algebra 2 content an opportunity to meet that graduation requirement. But the other option that's available is to, through a personal curriculum, to have half of the Algebra 2 content waived. And students can apply for that through a personal curriculum, but they do then have to make up that credit, that half a credit through another class. But there isn't an opportunity to waive the Algebra 2 content. The Algebra 2 content either has to be taught through an Algebra 2 class or through CTE program.
Okay, anyone else? Mrs.
Oh, thank you. Mrs. Ellis, so just to kind of dovetail on what Mrs. Bonnefield was asking, our mainstream high schools do not have the ability, or we don't have classes in place that could cover, like the electronics or computer science in any of our 3 high schools that would be able to cover this?
That's correct. We do not cover.
They would have to go to the Career Technical Center in order to accomplish this goal.
That's correct. They would have to go to the Career Technical Center. They'd have to participate in a Career Technical Center program.
Right, okay. So they only offer that here to dovetail to cover this requirement from the state?
That's correct.
Okay, all righty.
That's what's allowable through the state. The
Okay.
Algebra 2 content or Algebra 2 content taught through a CTE program.
Okay, all right, thank you for the clarification.
Absolutely.
Yes, President Bergman.
Mrs. Ellis, do we offer both the 1.5 and the 2-year option for Algebra 2? I know we offer 1, but I
No,
don't
we
remember.
offer 1.5 years of Algebra 2.
Okay.
And we offer Algebra 1 and then an intermediate algebra that bridges between Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, and then Algebra 2 over a year and a half.
Okay, all right. Also, it's my understanding that Dr. Janet Haas, who is our former principal at the Career Center, was instrumental in it looks like the beginning of this state change. And if that is the case, we in the state of Michigan owe her another debt of gratitude in getting that passed.
She was very forward-thinking in bringing the Algebra 2 content into the Career Technical program.
Yeah, it's nice to see that it's recognized statewide now.
Okay, so I'll move on to science. Science, there are 3 credits required, but we have biology, chemistry, physics, I'm looking at the state now, biology, chemistry, physics, anatomy, or agricultural science, or a curriculum that provides the same content as chemistry or physics benchmarks as determined by the Department of Education. So that's really taking the chemistry and physics content and embedding them in different classes. A new bullet is that a third credit may be fulfilled by completing a department-approved computer science program or curriculum, or by a CTE program or curriculum regardless of the content. So in this bullet, the third science credit can be fulfilled by participating in a CTE program. And then the last bullet is also new. The legislators strongly encourage pupils to complete a fourth science credit, and then they give some examples of what those credits could be. Our current graduation requirements are a credit of biology, a credit of chemistry, and a credit of physics or physical science. And we're recommending that we maintain the biology and the chemistry credit, and that we expand the third credit to include physics, physical science, or our CTE program for students who are already meeting the Algebra 2 requirement for through participation in a CTE program, that they're able to fulfill the third science credit through the CTE program. We have many of our classes in the CTE program that embed some of the chemistry and or physics content, such as health occupation, sports medicine, pre-nursing, pre-medical, computer science, graphic design, auto technology, just to name a few of them. This would provide some flexibility in students' course selection. As you know, there are 23 credits that are required for graduation, and already 18 of them have to be met through required classes. So this would free up some flexibility in students' scheduling.
Is it all?
Yes.
One quick question for you. Is it possible then that one course would actually, at the CTE, at our Career Center, would actually count toward their science and their Algebra 2 requirement?
That is correct.
Okay.
And that's the flexibility that these changes now will allow in student schedule.
Okay. And that's consistent also with some courses in college that count toward two different categories at the same time. Okay. Thank you.
And moving on to social studies, three credits remain. Our state's high school graduation requirements haven't changed. The LPS graduation requirements reflect the state's graduation requirements, so in this area, we are not recommending any changes. And now I'm going to turn the rest of the subject areas over to Steve.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis, and good evening, everyone. Happy New Year. Nice to see everyone. Moving on with physical education and health, currently the state requires one credit in this area, and that's one credit developed by the Michigan Department of Education. Or the new part is a half credit in health and a half credit in extracurricular activity that involves physical activity. Currently, we require a half credit in personal fitness and a half credit in health, and we are recommending no change in this area. The visual, performing, and applied arts, the requirement there.
Are there any questions on that?
Yes.
Can you, several of us have had a conversation, but can you explain to the public why?
Yes. The rationale there is that the curriculum in this course, the personal fitness course, goes much deeper with respect to the curriculum taught and the skills taught to promote healthy living and lifelong decisions, habits, and so forth, as opposed to just activity in a specific period of time. So it's going much deeper with respect to the curriculum that's taught.
And so for those that think that they're taking a personal fit class just to get in shape for a half a year, that's not the purpose at all of class. Class is to learn specific lifelong habits for maintaining good health. That's the purpose of the personal fit class that we hope kids will take away with it, and why, and through a lot of discussion, people were uncomfortable with giving up that particular requirement. And as you know, we have one of the top physical education programs, been recognized at the state level on many occasions. And we've always felt very strongly that it's more than just getting the activity. It's about learning to live a good, healthy life. And that's why the group has felt that we should keep it the same.
Any other questions on?
President Burton.
Just one point, for those who have this area of concern, we have, for example, students who have a very busy schedule, some of our music students do, for example, we still do offer our 7th hour, if I'm not mistaken, 7th hour health and physical, personal fitness classes, so that if a student can't fit it into their schedule, we've allowed another way so that that can happen.
That's correct. And students also complete this requirement through summer school. Some may complete the health requirement online in addition to their 6-hour day. So there are several options to be able to fulfill their requirement.
And they can test out of it also.
Correct.
Okay. So we're offering a lot of options, we're just not offering to eliminate it.
Correct. The visual, performing, and applied arts, the requirement is for 1 credit. These are credit guidelines developed by the Michigan Department of Education. And again, we currently offer 1 credit in this area. The proposed changes, this is actually a change by use of a personal curriculum plan as opposed to the actual graduation requirement itself. But a student, with our proposal, a student could use a personal curriculum plan to modify this requirement by taking an additional credit in English language arts, math, science, or world language. This was actually an option back in 2006 when personal curriculum plans first came about. And at that time, we decided not to take advantage of that. And through living with it now for several years and much more discussion, the principals, Mrs. Alice and myself, thought that it would be appropriate to take advantage of this flexibility, allow students to take additional academic coursework, and utilize the flexibility provided in the personal curriculum plan in this area. And the other option that is new is the completion of a CTE program in place of the 1 credit in visual, performing, and applied arts, and that's part of the recommendation. So there would be two options there.
And both of those would require a personal curriculum plan.
Correct. Questions on that?
How does one go about getting a personal curriculum plan?
The parent can request it, the student can request it, the parent or the teacher can request it, the counselor, the administrator. We have a process in place which we'll need to refine based on the decision that is made here, but it's a very simple notification basically with the counselor, and then they'll initiate the process with the appropriate folks to get that in place. So it's really initiated with the counselor.
Thank you.
Lastly, or next, is the world language requirement. And there are credits that are earned in grades K through 12. The course line content must be age appropriate. The language prior to this was high school equivalent, if you will, and now they've made it age appropriate.
So now you can earn the credit K-12 as opposed to before high school.
And before, you had to reach a certain level.
Okay.
That would be novice 1, novice 2 level, which would be equivalent to that high school level. Well, now it simply has to be age appropriate. So if you're teaching Spanish, let's say in the 4th grade, it's whatever would be appropriate for grade 4, if that makes sense. So age appropriate now as opposed to content appropriate or equivalent. The next one is an equivalent learning experience in grades K through 12. Our students are currently able to earn high school credit with their 8th grade world language class in Spanish, French, and German. And again, this started with the class of 2016. Moving over to the last column, in addition to the 2 credits of world language, and they have to be in the same language, so a student can't take 1 year of Spanish and a year of French. We are proposing that the students be able to take 1 credit of a world language plus 1 credit of CTE, and that would satisfy the 2 years, the 2-year requirement. Or 1 credit of a world language plus 1 credit of visual, performing, and applied arts, in addition to the already required 1 credit in visual, performing, and applied arts. So what we find with this proposal, a recommendation would be some flexibility. Certainly, students can still take 2 years of a world language or more if they wish, but in all honesty, we're finding that that isn't perhaps in all students' best interest, and this would provide then the student, the parent, and the school some scheduling flexibility with respect to fulfilling that requirement. Yes.
Throughout this, when substituting 1 CTE, would the student internship program count as a CTE?
I don't believe it does, but I will verify that.
Yeah, I don't believe it.
think so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we can double check that though.
Any other questions on the world language? The last one is the online learning experience, and there are no proposed changes there from the state, and we are therefore not recommending any changes. We fulfill this requirement, that 20-hour requirement is embedded into our core curriculum classes. So no changes to the online learning experience. The document that's coming around now is simply the document from the board policy manual, and you'll see, interestingly enough, we probably talked for 20 minutes, and when you look at it, it looks much simpler in this form. But you'll see the changes that we're proposing reflected in red. The only change that is not there is in F, the visual, performing, and applied arts. Again, because those changes we're proposing are implemented through a personal curriculum plan as opposed to reflected in the graduation requirements.
And on the second page of our board policy, we do have an indication, number 7, of personal curriculum plan.
If I may, the one thing I don't think we've mentioned to this point is that these changes would take effect for the class of 2016.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Is this, oh, I'm sorry. Mrs.
Just in
Bonfield?
the wording, down in G, it says 1 unit of world language, same language. Should that not say same language since it's already 1 unit? Or could they, is that in lieu of 2 half units? If the wording's fine, that's okay.
What we're trying to avoid by that clarification is a student taking 1 semester in 1 language and another semester in a different language.
Okay.
Dr. Leopold?
Just from a big picture standpoint, I think there will be some appreciation of some added flexibility in the graduation requirements. Certainly having strong and high expectations for the graduation requirements is a good thing, but we have struggled a little bit with the flexibility for certain students. And I can assure you, we have been hearing it from our business community. As you know, I am actively involved with the Chamber of Commerce as it relates to different opportunities for their needs to find skilled labor. And there's a Livonia Industrial Council where Dan West has been written up several times in the Livonia Observer about finding good people with skilled trades. And so this flexibility, I think, is going to open some more flexibility for students where there are good opportunities. Not saying they won't go to college anyways, but good opportunities even if they go to college for some skilled labor jobs that are out there that are attractive. People are just anxious to get the word out. So I know our business community is going to appreciate these changes in the graduation requirements from the state, and going to appreciate you all taking advantage of them if you decide to pass the policy.
President Burton.
I would like to suggest that for F, we do put some language in that describes the possible changes to the visual performing arts, because if we just read this, it would look to someone who's not attended this meeting or delved deeply into it, that there is no option. If the board does approve this option on the second page under visual performing arts, I would like to note it as such.
If I can just suggest in your policy under number 7, it talks about personal curriculum plan.
But it
Now,
doesn't.
it doesn't talk specifically about visual applied arts, but.
Right, it doesn't, while I appreciate that, and I'm glad that it's in there, because it does give us the flexibility that we need, it doesn't give any kind of guidance, as we have in all of the other areas, as to what would or would not be acceptable. So if the board is going to approve this specific acceptable change, I would like to see it written somewhere, even if we say, in parentheses after, required personal curriculum plan for this option.
My only hesitation with that is there are, most of the graduation, most of our required classes can be modified for students with disabilities through a personal curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
So it would not just be the visual performing and applied arts that allows modifications. And our Algebra 2, half of our content for Algebra 2 can also be modified through a personal curriculum. And so
If we did it on one, we'd have to do it on.
I think we would have,
It could potentially become much more complicated than, it might create more confusion than.
And just letting the
than
counselors know that
clarification.
this is an option for kids as they're working through
And,
this.
and there is, if it helps, there is a responsibility for annual communication with respect to a personal curriculum plan and its possible uses. And we might be able to approach that more effectively through that communication.
what about the course selection sheet, if we could indicate it on the course selection sheet as well?
We
So
do
that there'd
think
be
that this is.
opportunities to communicate it rather than putting it in the board policy.
Yeah, my concern would be if we noted it on F, does it create an illusion to people that it's not available in the other subject areas? That having a personalized plan is available under performing arts, but not social, does it create the illusion that maybe other areas it's not?
I know if we put this on the agenda for Monday, let us take a stab at this, and maybe we can send something out, or we can communicate it next week.
I would
I think I
appreciate
know
it,
what you're
because I
trying
think
to
if there is, if we are making a concerted effort here with that requirement, to give a lot of other courses that could fulfill it. I mean, I appreciate the effort that you've gone through to give some flexibility. My concern is, I'm admittedly a policy geek, but I like our policy to really reflect what our policy is. And if we do have some significant options for visual and performing arts, I would like it stated so. If we're trying to be clear in all of our other areas, I don't want to be unclear in this one.
Could we just take that cell and put it under F or with F?
We could take a look at it,
Okay.
and try to figure out, again, we need to be careful because we're not being crystal clear in other areas where people can utilize the personal curriculum either.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this is now a 15-page document when it's better to communicate that through counselors and through information we send home to parents and leave the board policy, in our eyes, more clear in regards to the big picture. But I hear what you're saying, we can take a look at it.
Yeah, whatever we have on this document, and whether it even required adding language in another area, I would just like our policy to reflect our true day-to-day practice. I think this board has gone to great lengths to do that. So if we're going to make some other offerings, I would just like this policy to reflect what we truly do offer.
Maybe a better place to include it is on number 7, where we may even say a list of courses and content that can be modified is available through the high school.
That might be a good place to put it.
Yeah.
That's, right, options exist for, and we don't even have to list certainly every single individual course, but.
Because they
but-
could change.
Right, but options,
point,
you know, put it in general terms, but under that personal curriculum plan, you know, options exist for the visual and performing arts and so forth.
Mrs. McDonald?
Thank you, Mrs. Laura. How about keeping it simple and just maybe put a little asterisk on it and just note it at the bottom of the policy that these courses are applicable towards, you know, personal curriculum. I mean, instead of
You'd
making
have to put an asterisk on every single item. though.
Because for some students,
For some
students with,
students.
Oh, some
students
would
with
be-
disabilities,
Yeah.
they can have a personal
I
curriculum
thought
for
the same
every
thing.
course.
And then I said, well, then we're gonna put an asterisk by every one, which
Yeah.
gets rid of the meaning of the asterisk.
But I think, if I'm hearing it correctly, I think the emphasis is not to confuse it, but to communicate the changes that we're making or suggesting, because it's significant change, this substitution. And perhaps could be best done by including some wording in number 7, and let's take a
We'll take a
we'll
stab
take a
at
stab
it.
at it.
That may take care of it.
Mrs. Jarvis?
The way I read it, each of the letter areas has a certain number of credits, and then the bullet points show what those credits are comprised of. And while F looks rather lonely without having any explanation, it is only one credit, and it's not broken down. It's not comprised of specific requirements. So it is complete. And because any of these could be addressed in a personal curriculum, it doesn't make sense to only put that at one item.
I would agree. But I think we've come up with a good idea on how to handle that, so, but, and to your point, yeah, otherwise maybe creating more confusion than solving.
And just to give you an idea, the visual performing applied arts, that can be met through probably nearly 30 classes across multiple content areas, so, but we've got an approach. We'll
Including some of the CTE classes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Those are great comments.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much.
And then we can give
This
this
will
to
be
you.
ready for the agenda for first reading?
First reading on
Next week,
next Monday.
on the 12th? Okay, anything else? Good, thank you. And that brings an end to the policy committee.
And that also then brings an end to our agenda, so we are adjourned for this evening.
Thank you.
First one done, it'd be great.
Yeah.